Our job is to prepare students for an unknown world. We don't know what the world's going to look like. Technology is exponentially improving and expanding, almost to a point now where even if you're a technology specialist and all you do is look at tech all day, you're still behind. Because it's just so much that can be built, and that's so much that is out there. So really, we need critical thinkers, we need collaborators, we need people who can problem solve.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we record this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Welcome to Rainbow Skies for Teachers. It's Alisha here, and I have a fabulous guest with me today. It's Robby Cobbs. He's an international educator, a lifelong learner, and the founder of Tech My School. This is a non-profit supporting underfunded schools in Puerto Rico and beyond through technology and training. Now, if you've been interested about technology and how it's being implemented in schools, Robby is the guy to talk to. His journey is anything but linear, from growing up from very little to teaching around the world and to eventually seeing firsthand the deep educational inequities facing Puerto Rican schools. Now, what started as donating a few computers to one school grew into a movement focused on thoughtful, human-centered technology integration. Now, in this episode, we talk about the real impact of EdTech versus tech ed. Didn't know there was a difference, but now I do now. As well as how AI can support teachers rather than replace them, and why balancing digital tools with hands-on learning is critical for student success. And we also dive into trust with educators, parents, and communities, and what it truly takes to create meaningful change in education. So pop in your AirPods, go for a walk, and let's jump into our chat with Robby. Welcome, Robby, to the show. It is so lovely to have you here at Rainbow Skies for Teachers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I'm going to start with a nice, easy question, because I'm sure the listeners out there would love to know more about who you are, the background story to what led to the creation of Tech My School.
Absolutely. All right. Lifelong learner, lifelong educator. I was that really poor kid who lived on free lunches and all that kind of stuff. And being in school, that was kind of my sanctuary. My home life was pretty rough, but my school life was amazing. I just went to a regular public school, but we just had great systems in place. I grew up in San Diego, California, and it wasn't a particularly wealthy public school. It was just your run-of-the-mill public school in San Diego. But for me, it was just such a great place to grow up and learn and those kinds of things. And I really valued that experience. And I didn't really understand that until I got older. I was just going through it as a kid, and I just liked school. But then when I was in university, I got an opportunity to work at an elementary school to help kids learn how to read. I was basically in uni in Hawaii, and I was working at a surf shop, which is the coolest job you can have.
I could imagine. Hawaii.
Yeah.
It sounds great.
Yeah, Waikiki, the whole thing. That was me. And I needed a little more money, so I went to the university team and I said, hey guys, can I work at a library to get paid to do my homework? And they said, sorry, that job's taken. But if you want, you can work at an elementary school in the inner city schools to teach kids to learn how to read. And I thought about it and I was like, I have no aspirations of being an educator, but I do want to be a great dad one day. So maybe I'll go there. I'll learn some dad skills. So when I'm doing the little league coaching for my own kids one day, I'll have some experience. And fast forward a month or two, and the surfing job was okay, but I had a boss. There was sales. It was a job. I was looking at the clock. When do I get out of here? But when I was working at the school, it was never like that. When I was in the school, I was just happy to be there. All these emotions came rushing back from when I was in elementary school. And there was just this one particular day where I had two shifts, the surf shop and then the school. I had the surf shop first, and I was like, yeah, when do I get out of here? And when I was at the school, I was helping this little girl to read. And the teacher came. It was actually more literacy. And the teacher approached me. She's like, hey, I just want you, the girl you've been working with, she got 5 out of 10 on the spelling test. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm working hard, but we'll try harder. And she's like, no, you don't get it. She's never spelled the word correctly before. Like, how did you get her to spell 5 out of 10? And I was just like, I don't know. We played tic-tac-toes and we did it with the rest of the alphabet. Then we started doing sight words and then spelling words. And that's how we did it.
Wow.
And yeah, I just knew right then and there, I was like, this wasn't work. This felt like so natural. I never watched the clock. It just felt like such a great place. And I reflected on why did this place feel so good? That kind of came to me like, oh yeah, when I was in elementary school, it was such an important, I guess it was an important place. And yeah, so I shifted majors. That was my first year of college. And I worked in schools ever since. So I interned the entirety of my university years. When I went and did my secondary like graduate work, I worked in schools as well. And then my roommate was from Sweden, and I loved traveling. So I would go to Sweden in the summers, and we'd go around to like France and Germany and all these cool countries. I just love that. And I was like,
Mm.
man, wouldn't that be cool if you could travel and teach? But I was like, I don't want to teach English because that's like lame. You can make $5 a day or something. I really want to make like real teaching, but internationally. And I was like, it's just a pipe dream. Until one of my friends I met overseas, he was like, hey, I went to a party and there was this guy and he is an international teacher. And I said, what is that? And so basically, there are schools in every major city around the world where they teach diplomat kids, they teach kids who work at companies like Nokia or Apple or Nestle or whatever. And then also the well-to-do in that country, like the kings or like the president's kids or whatever. They all go to this like these international schools because they're always bouncing around the world. They might sign a 3-year contract in Chile, one contract, and the next contract they're in Thailand. How do you have that continuity? You get it through these international schools. And so for us Americans, that was very foreign. They don't talk about something like this. I
No.
uncovered it. And once I did, I literally went on this website called International Schools Services, ISS, and had a list of all the schools that they worked with. It was basically like a who's who of international schools. And I just applied. I just uploaded my CV to every school in the world. And a few days later, it was like I did that Saturday. Monday morning, some guy calls me. He's like, hey, are you ready to come to Kazakhstan? And I was like,
What?
all
Where's
right.
that?
Yeah, correct. And I was like, all right. And so I was off. I started working at the American International School of Almaty, Kazakhstan. And I worked as a kindergarten teacher. That was my
Wow.
favorite grade.
Wow.
I
Oh,
loved
you're in good company.
kindergarten.
Ashley, a business partner, she loves kindergarten. That was her favorite. Didn't have the privilege, but currently my daughter is in kindy. It looks great.
There you go. The thing about kindergarten is it's like they're little drunk people.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? They're so emotionally into it. They're so present. When they're coloring something, they're like, oh, I'm gonna color this apple so red, you know? And it's just they get so excited, they get so sad. It's just so cute. And then you feel like so accomplished by the end of the year because they come into your class not knowing anything. And by the
Yeah.
end, they're writing, they know math, they know all these things. So you think, wow, I'm a great teacher. And so, anyways, I continued on that journey of working at these international schools, went to Qatar. We did go back to the States for a few years. We worked at a Chinese international school in Silicon Valley. And as I became a teacher, I realized, again, through self-reflection, what my two core values were. Schools
Hmm.
have core values. My core values are I love to learn and I
Yeah.
love to help. Like those are my two big things.
Yeah.
And so I gravitated towards technology because there's always something new to learn. There's always new apps, there's new
Yeah.
strategies, there's new programs, there's always a buzz. And so I love that. And then when you learn these new technologies, everyone wants to know, how did you find this out? Or how do you use that? Or what's this? So you get to help people by teaching them this technology. And it just helped me perfect my craft. I became a better educator by mastering and facilitating these great tools. And so the reason I went back to California was to get my master's in educational technology and IT so I can be a better educator with technology. And I thought the coolest place to do it would be in Silicon Valley. So I got a job at this international school. It was a Chinese international school called Yucheng. And I was the EdTech kind of integrator. So once a week, I'd train the staff on EdTech latest happenings. And then in my class, I was like super techie. And then I also taught fourth grade, which happens to be another grade that I just absolutely love. Kinder and fourth are my favorite. And so I did that for 3 years, master's in EdTech. And I was just in Google Campus. Like all my kids were like Facebook, NASA, because they're all right there in Silicon Valley. Netflix, all those big tech companies are all there, and
Yeah.
their kids are brilliant, and the parents are brilliant. So bringing in people from like Honda Robotics and just all this cool stuff. So that was really a great place to get immersed into technology and really take it on. Continued on to Saudi Arabia and then Nigeria. When I was in Saudi Arabia, I became the technology director, which basically I went from teacher to teacher trainer to like CTO of schools. And then I did that in Saudi Arabia and then Nigeria. So at that point, that had been about 15 years. And I was like, okay, I've done it. I've had a really nice little career here. COVID happened. I actually, ironically, was a remote learning specialist because when I was in Saudi Arabia, you always have to be prepared for terrorist attacks or whatever, like school
Got
shutting
you.
down from So we would do all these remote days and we had these whole remote plan and stuff like that. So I got hired in Nigeria to be that guy because of Ebola and
Yes.
government shutdown. So I was preparing and training the staff for COVID before COVID happened.
And then there's a
So when COVID happened,
pandemic.
it was like, yeah. So when
I'm
COVID happened,
sorted.
yeah, we were good. We didn't miss a beat. We were ready to go. We had a plan. I gave it right on my director's desk. Here we go. Ready to go. We've
Wow.
been trained for it. It was great, but we also burned ourselves out because we were so ready and we were like trying to go over the top. And so we were just like, okay, time to take a break. I'm going to do 1 year sabbatical. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to write a book on EdTech and
Yep.
I'm going to relax. And so we were debating where do we want to do this, my wife and I. By this point, I had married a wife and had 2 kids. And we decided, okay, it's got to be on a beautiful island. So it's either going to be Zanzibar, because we love Zanzibar. We'd been there. Thailand, which we'd been 4 times. We love Thailand. Or Puerto Rico. And so we were weighing our options, pros and cons, and we landed on Puerto Rico because ultimately the deciding factor, because they all had beautiful beaches, they all had like really interesting cultures and nature and stuff like that. But after living in Africa, you miss the Tim Tam type
Yeah.
stuff, your comfort food.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they have Costco in Puerto Rico. So I was like, they have a Costco, which is like a Tesco or like a
Yes.
big shopping mart, a Carrefour. I'm not sure exactly what they have in Australia, but
Like a good Woolworths and Coles over here. But
yes,
we do
Woolworths.
we do have
Yeah,
Costco. We've got one Costco in Perth, another to
there
come.
you
How
go.
exciting. But yeah,
Yes.
I get it. There's an element
Yeah,
of
so we wanted the comfort
loneliness.
food, and then I studied Spanish for 6 years in college and in high school. I wasn't great. I didn't take it seriously, but I could say some things. And I felt to really learn a language, you have to be immersed. Like your brain has to be forced. I think that's how you really master it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I was like, for my kids, I want them to be immersed in it. We'll do this wonderful year in Puerto Rico. I'll put them in a local school. I'll go fishing. I'll write this book. It'll be a relaxing year. And then I'll go back to this very comfortable lifestyle, working in international schools, working with some of the top kids and teachers and educators in the world. And that would be it. And then we had this whole plan, very much so an A-type plan. We're going to live in Africa when they're in elementary school. And then we're going to live in Asia when they're in middle school, and Europe when they're in high school. Anyways, we stumbled upon Puerto Rico and I knew it, but I didn't really know it. Puerto Rico is America. So
Hmm.
it's an island. It's in the Caribbean. It's past Cuba. It's past Jamaica. We're towards the edge there in the Atlantic, but it's an American territory. Everyone here is an American citizen. It does have Costco. It has the United States Postal Service, the National Park Service. So it has all or many of the same components of any United state.
Yep.
But the difference is the language is Spanish, predominantly Spanish, and it also very much has this kind of Latin Puerto Rican culture. It's its
Mhm.
own thing. So it's very, when you're here, you don't feel like you're in America. You
Yeah.
feel like you're in the Latin world, but everyone here has a US passport and is an American citizen and all that kind of stuff. So I knew it, didn't know it until I moved here. And then what really got me was we ended up staying a little bit longer than we thought we would. We're just going to do Airbnbs. We ended up buying the house and we're like, this is great. This will be our summer house. And we put the boys in the local school. And man, we were so shocked because, again, I used to work in the inner cities of Hawaii.
Yeah.
So Hawaii is an island American state or whatever. And it's not as strong academically as California, but it's still an American, there's a certain level, like libraries and fields and sports teams and those kinds of things. Here in Puerto Rico, it's not like that. It's so much closer to Nigeria than it is
Wow.
Florida or Hawaii or Texas. And so for me, that just did not sit right because I'm looking at a classroom that is just a concrete slab, a fan, some desks, and a chalkboard with no library. There's no public libraries in Puerto Rico. There's just no book. The school I put my boys in, there was no cafeteria. There was no playground. They were literally the only playground they had. They would just play in the parking lot. And
Gosh.
the school had one ball. It was like this old volleyball that was all tore up. And it was brutal. I'm like,
Yeah.
how is this America? So I didn't want to be that parent because I know how parents are, but the eye test is screaming red flags, but you know what? Let the kids do their thing and I'll just observe. By the second day, I was like, this is crazy. And
I have to implement.
so
I have to infiltrate this, break it
well,
up.
just like I got to put some peepers on this thing because I was asking my kids, they're teacher kids. So I'm like, hey, what happened? And they're just like, Dad, what happened? What is this? So I came in there and I'm like, hey, I'm a fellow educator. I'm just here writing a book. I can see through the matrix. I'm not a crazy parent, I promise. And so as we were kind of walking around, I was like, hey, I noticed there isn't a library. How are you teaching literacy? Like, where are the books? And
Yeah.
how's reading happening? And the director was, oh, we have these classroom books and our teachers write stuff on the board. And I was like, okay. I'm like, don't take this the wrong way, but how would you like 50,000 books? I would love to give you 50,000 books. She's like, okay, what do you mean? I'm like, because they didn't have a library space. Like all the space was occupied by these classrooms. And I was like, there's this program called Epic or Get Epic.
Yeah.
It's an online library, 50,000 books. I'd love to give it to your school and set up accounts for all your teachers and your kids and everybody. I'm like, what's your email? And she was, oh, like catlady69 at Gmail or whatever. And I'm just like, no, like, what's your school email? And she's like, that's it. We have no school email. And I was just like, oh, that's not good. Cause I'm looking at this like 40-year-old teacher who's like using his personal email to email his 12-year-old girl students.
Yeah.
That's not good. So I was like, all right. And I'm just putting my tech director lens never comes off. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. All right, so you don't have a library, you don't have emails. And I started asking student information system, learning management system, like they had nothing. And so I just became their technology director. I got their school emails. I got them the Google for Education. I got them Epic. And then I bought a truck for a boat, but then I had this other money for the boat. I started like tapping into this boat money to get everyone computers, get everyone software, just get the school set up.
Yeah.
And then I went from like a new parent to training all staff
Wow.
the first month. Yeah. So the first month of being there, like we signed up in September. By October 1st, I'm training all staff. Full professional development. So I'm bringing food and drinks and just training them on like, their emails and how to be teachers. And so, yeah, it was just one school. But then there's this whole like consortium of churches. Puerto Rico is a very religious place. So it's 90+% identify as Christian or Catholic or whatever.
Wow.
So it's the most religious place in America.
Yeah.
Like more so than like Mississippi or Alabama, those Bible belts.
Yes.
Puerto Rico identifies far more religious than those states do. And so these teachers were talking to each other at church saying, there's this gringo, which basically means
yes, tourists.
This foreigner, he's giving us computers, he's giving us all this stuff. You should ask him to help your school. And so random teachers, hey, I heard about what you're doing with that school. Can you come to our school? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I went to that school and I became their tech department. And so in a very short period of time, by the end of the year, I had 4 schools where I was the technology director for these 4 schools, like getting computers, software, setting everything up. And I was traveling around the island doing all this work. And I turned it into a nonprofit called Tech My School.
Wow.
And so that's how Tech My School started. And really it was just like, I'm a global citizen. I feel like every child deserves a world-class education. When I was working in these other countries, I was a guest. I was there on a work visa. I was working within my community, and we'd reach out to the communities I was working in were like the affluent communities, these wealthy business owners or diplomats or whatever, or literally kings. But there were surrounding schools, and I always would reach out and try to donate things or provide some sort of service to like local orphanages or local schools that were poor. And we would do functions like that in Africa and Saudi and those kind of places. So that was already in my DNA. And yeah, with that in mind, I was just like, these other countries, I am a guest here. I will give them some computers or some service, but it's here you go. Thank you. But it's your country. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But coming to Puerto Rico, I was like, this is literally my country.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico has its own ethnicity and their own culture and the whole thing, but they're still same passport.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at same passport. That's my people. And I was like, I cannot sleep knowing the kids are getting such a ripped off education, because really what makes America wonderful and Australia and many Western countries such a great place to be is the fact that it doesn't really matter, what you are, it's who you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you're Chinese or ethnically Syrian or ethnically or whatever. In the US, you just come there and you work hard in schools, you're going to be successful. And it doesn't matter if you're in the inner city schools, the private schools, public schools, it doesn't matter. Like education that is the great equalizer. That is the rope, and that you can pull yourself out. Now, I'm not saying that everyone starts with the same rope. Like some kids come to like these elite private schools and they have all these kind of like hookups or whatever. But I worked inner city schools 6 years. I'm like the poorest kid I know growing up. If you work hard, great things can happen. And it's all comes down to the choices that you make yourself, saying no to drugs, saying no to gangs, saying no to laziness or video games, and just locking in. Same thing with my sister. My sister's a cancer researcher. She's a pharmaceutical director. She's crushing it.
Yeah.
We both came from a very poor background, but we both tried hard in school and elevated ourselves. And so in Puerto Rico, that doesn't exist. You have great kids. Families are bought in. Everyone's trying their best. And then by the time they graduate, they're 17 years old. They've never used a computer before. They barely speak English, and they read at a 3rd grade level. You know what I mean? And they were like good kids.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem, that I was like, they don't have this rope that should be afforded to them being American. So Yeah, it
Absolutely.
was tough. It was tough to see, and that was the birth of Tech My School. A little bit long-winded, sorry.
No, it's amazing. I think a lot of teachers out there are very intrigued about the international teaching scene, about technology, about where we are in society with the advancements in AI and how does that impact us. So I think I've been in the educational space getting close to, oh gosh, like 20 years. And the talk of technology is an important one. I know that what led to me moving schools in an international space was because there was a lack of technology. And I was like, I need to build my skill set if I want to continue working in this profession to be at least dipping my toes in, to not necessarily be ahead of the pack, but to keep up with it because the speed of technology in the last 50 years is phenomenal. So the question is that you had these underfunded schools in Puerto Rico. As a lifelong learner and your skill set, your passion would have just been ignited. What made technology both an opportunity and a challenge? In that time of you starting to integrate, what roadblocks did you hit along the way that were like, but the opportunity that kept you going with that?
Yeah, so technology, it plays a very interesting role, especially with AI. I don't think we could have been as successful if AI wasn't a part of the solution because AI was coming out right as I started Tech My School. So roadblock, everyone here is an American citizen, so they can take a Spirit airline flight, a local carrier flight to Florida or New York or New Jersey and make 5 times the money they make here. There's no visa requirement. They just go. They just have to get on a plane and go. And there's a teacher shortage in the mainland. So there's so much demand for teachers, especially if you're bilingual.
Yeah.
And so everyone here who's a teacher is pretty much bilingual and they all leave. So what we're left with is a very interesting pool of educators where they're either untrained because they had an ordinance in Puerto Rico last year where they were short 300 teachers. So they just said, you don't even have to go to college. If you just graduated high school, you can be a teacher. Now imagine you're graduating from one of these high schools where you're barely at literacy level of like middle school. And
Yes.
now you're 18 years old and you're leading a group of kids. It's the blind leading the blind, right?
Yeah.
It's ruthless. These states will come in. There's this giant recruiting fair. Texas will come in and recruit teachers, and New York and all these Florida. They're just coming and cherry picking any teacher who's competent and who is an economic migrant looking for a better opportunity. And plus the schools you're going to work in the mainland are just so much better funded and have so many more resources in just every way. So it's very tempting to leave. And so the people we get are either really inexperienced, people who are just, you ask them, why'd you become a teacher? It's not the stories that we grow up and we know, like we were inspired by this teacher or this moment or whatever. I love this subject. It was like, I was working at a gas station, it got robbed, and I'm tired of working the night shift. So I'm just going to be a teacher. That was literally said to me. Or it's some old grandma, abuela, she's retired and they just got bored and came back. And so it's super old school.
Yeah.
There are a few teachers who are like star teachers who just love the island. They love their family, love the culture. They never want to leave Puerto Rico. And so they're talented and they stay. So you do get those teachers here and there, but I would say like many teachers are not that. And yeah, it's a tough pool of teachers to, I guess you could say, rely on in terms from a skill set, just because the expectations are lower and they're just constantly being tugged at by opportunities from these other states. So capacity is a huge challenge. So when you donate technology, Tech My School has 3 facets that we look at. The first is looking at improving educational systems. So that's like policy, technology, hardware, software, everything you can touch, create, make, those kinds of things. The second thing we look at is building capacity of educators. So how does adult learning look like in the school and what is driving that instruction? And then the third thing we look at is student empowerment, what are kids doing? So
Yeah.
that's a huge part of it is staff capacity. We train schools every month going in. We donate the technology, but we have to teach them and hold their hands and show them how to do it. So the challenge is just working with teachers who are either tech resistant or just they don't know tech at all, or they don't have these other skills. So those are kind of the roadblocks.
Yeah.
And there's just there's unlimited demand of need of support. So any school on the island we can work with and give them hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of software and hardware, and it would make their school a way better place. You know what I mean? So we have to be smart with how we're spending our time and money and effort, because sometimes we'll donate things to schools. We'll do the professional developments. We'll give them the computers, the softwares. We set up all the accounts, all the passwords, everything. And then if the leadership isn't fully bought in, that we want the free stuff, but we don't want to follow through with the actual work of learning, then we're wasting a lot of money and time. We'll bring the gym, we'll build the gym at your property, and we'll train you on how to lift the weights, but you got to lift the weights.
Yeah.
If you're cheating, eating all the chocolate and not coming, it's like you're wasting everybody's time. But the way AI has really helped us is even before AI came out, there was this kind of push from going from the teacher being the center of the universe to more of a facilitator of the learning for students. And now with AI, it's become exponentially easier to do that. There's whole school models now, like the Alpha School model, which is based specifically on that, like student interest and having AI drive a lot of the instructional components, individualizing the teaching and learning for kids. So kids are working at their own brain speed rather than the lowest common denominator of 20 people in a room. And so what's great for us working with these teachers who either don't have the capacity or the knowledge, or maybe they're like used to doing it this old school way, we can come in and say, hey, we can make your life so easy because we can give you these programs that will fetch a lesson plan for you in seconds. They'll create PowerPoint presentations instantaneously or 30 seconds to a minute. It'll track all the student data. You can just facilitate learning to kids and they can go through the program. All the pressure comes off your shoulders to come up with these interactive lessons and all this crazy stuff. And it's just pushed onto them. Let the AI do the heavy lifting and you can do more one-on-one coaching when those kids fall into those learning traps where they need additional support. So we're really pushing that in our schools, in our model. It's been great, but definitely challenging because there are some teachers we work with who just do not want to, they're like, we don't even want to open the computer.
Yeah. So it seems like in terms of one of the greatest challenges you have, or when you're like going into a school, you have to ascertain what is the capacity of these educators. I can set them up with a policy. We can work on the student empowerment, but if the capacity of those educators and there are roadblocks with their own journey in technology, like they might have this fixed mindset of like new technology too hard. But if you're putting up, when you go bowling, right, you put up the guardrails and you go, okay, this is your capacity, but we can step it up and have someone here to hold your hand, put the guardrails up and provide a pathway for you. And AI is providing that tool to create that kind of comfort for them to go, you know what, you're a great educator. If we just add the right tools, we can even enhance that to build your students' empowerment, to allow them to be keeping up to date with the pace of life and learning and being a digital citizen, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. In the US mainland, they have something that's called an IEP. Have you ever heard of that?
An individual education plan?
Yes. So that's with kids who are either special needs or they're high achieving students. So you're personalizing a learning plan for them.
Yeah.
Our flagship product with Tech My School is called the ITP, the Individualized Technology Plan. Every learner is different. Every school is different. So when we come in, we're doing a big assessment of the school. And based off that assessment, we then gauge how professional learning is going to come. We have this whole gap analysis of what tools and what things we're going to provide the school based off these things. And then also what kids are actually doing as well. There is an AI component. We do like to facilitate those tools, but it's also very human as well.
Yeah.
Because we're coming in, originally I was thinking of the name of the company to be Teach My School, but I didn't want to come off as presumptuous, pretentious. You know that word?
Pretentious, yes. Yeah. Like, wow, I know everything. Yes.
Pretentious. Thank you. It was on my tongue. So I don't want to come off as pretentious. And so it's still in the name. If you look at Tech My School, between the E and the C, there's an A. It's just invisible. You know, in tech, there's an invisible A there. But anyways, it's a very human component. So relationships are super, super important, especially with the nature and culture of Puerto Rico, because in Puerto Rico, it's seen as less than. Most Americans or some Americans don't even know that Puerto Rico is part of its own country. They don't understand that everyone here is an American citizen. It's their fellow citizens. It's their country. Even last night, there was a Super Bowl, a big sporting event, and the halftime performance was by this guy named Bad Bunny, who's from Puerto Rico. And his performance was done in all Spanish, and it was almost like a musical. It was very cultural, and it had all these, you should watch it on YouTube if you want, it's 2 minutes, but he goes through all the little micro scenes of Puerto Rico, touching on many things. So he was really representing Puerto Rico and the good things and the struggle of Puerto Rico. And there was a huge backlash on Twitter or X from many mainland Americans who are just like, who is this person? Why are they speaking Spanish? Puerto Rico, deport these people. And this is your country. So there's just like this lack of awareness that comes with it. And so when you're working with people, especially when you're not fluently speaking Puerto Rican Spanish because they have their own dialect, I know that you have to be a little bit conscientious of that. And so even my first couple trainings, I was in front of the staff and I was, raise your hand if you can understand English. And a few people raised their hand timidly. And I'm like, all right, cool, come up on the stage with me. I'm going to say this slide in English. You're going to say this slide in Spanish, and we're going to teach this together.
Yeah.
And so that's what I started to do. And then we ended up building this program called the Flock Leader Program. So what we do is in every school that we work with, we actually will pay one person to be a technology integrator with us. So when we go do the training, a portion of the training is going to be theirs. So we'll say, hey, this is the tool we're going to use, practice in your class for this month. And then when we do our training, you're going to teach it to your staff.
Yeah.
And so the staff that we're working with doesn't see us as outsiders. They see us as a cohesive team. And then we also take all of the flock leaders from all the different schools and we create this kind of a PLC. We're all coming together and we're learning even more together.
Yes.
So they're building a network for themselves with other teachers outside of their school and really just creating that community.
Absolutely.
With this flock leader program. Yeah. And that process, this ITP process to create a technology plan, we were in Orlando. And when we were in Orlando, we were talking about Tech My School. We were at the FETC conference. It's a big EdTech conference in the US. And this gentleman came by and he was covering his badge because he didn't really want people to know who he was. So anyways, he was like, tell us about you and blah, blah, blah. And I was talking about Tech My School, how we help. We're looking for partners to donate technology to us because we donate thousands of computers to schools in Puerto Rico. I was looking for teachers to come present at our conference. We put on this big EdTech conference. It's the biggest EdTech conference in the Caribbean. We have it free for teachers within Tech My School because, again, I forgot to mention, they make very little money here. So they're making about $1,500 per month, but milk is $8.
Oh,
because we're on an island and everything has to be shipped in.
yes.
And to put it in context, I have a brother who's the PE teacher in California in San Diego, and he's making 105, 110,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so anyone from here can go there and make 105, 110,000.
Yeah.
And so they're staying here to make under 20,000 a year. That's not saying they're making 5K less. So anyways, I was like, we have this conference, we have these donations we do, we can serve your school, we can come in and do this audit and, create a tech plan for your school. And he was like, I love what you guys are doing. Our school definitely needs this. He's like, I've got 1,000 schools. I work for Google. I want you to do 1,000 of our schools. Can you guys do it? And I was like, no, I cannot because we have 5 people in our team and it takes time to do it.
Yeah.
Our whole process takes a few weeks to audit the school and have these conversations and go through these modules. Anyways, so I knew then I was thinking I needed to put this into a software, this process. And so we ended up saying, okay, we better put this in a software. So we put it into a software. So now any school in the world can buy it. And without us using AI, it's taking all of our strategies and my book and everything I've learned in technology and put it into this process with the help of AI. It's called Tech Plan Genie. Go to techplangenie.com. It's one of one. There's no other software like it in the world that I know of. And essentially, it helps schools strategically plan using Tech Plan Genie. And so they go through their modules with their teams. And then at the end of it, you click Generate Tech Plan. And then it uses all that great data that you've aggregated to create this downloadable, editable PDF. That's your tech plan. And then there's even more to it. Usually when you create a technology plan or any strategic plan in a school, once you make the plan, you take a picture, you pat yourself on the back, and then you call it a day, right?
Yeah.
Yay, we're so good. And then 2 years later, you're like, oh yeah, remember that tech plan? Aren't we supposed to do some stuff? And I left, so I don't even remember.
Yeah, so true.
So with Tech Plan Genie, there's a progress module. So every month it pings you and says, hey, what'd you do this month? Fill it out. And it gives you this template to fill out. And at the end of the month, you click Generate End of Year Report, and it creates this beautiful, downloadable, editable PDF. This is what we said we were going to do. This is what we actually did. Here's our wins. It's great to share to all your stakeholders, your parents, your boards, your accreditation teams, principals. It's the first tool for an IT professional in a school. Yes. Because as a tech director or a tech integrator or tech coach or even an IT network guy, you have to know a lot of tools. You have to know about SISs and LMSs and
all those acronyms.
Magic School and MDMs, blah, 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 blah. But they're not for you. You're supposed to just know them.
Yeah.
And they do a function for the school, but it doesn't help your job per se. It's not a tool specifically just for your position. With Tech Plan Genie, this is it. So whether you're at a really great school and you just want additional support to save you time and keep you on track, or you're an IT guy who maybe you know network, but you don't know teaching and learning, and you need this helps guide those conversations. Or maybe you're a principal at a small school and you're like, you know what? I know teaching and learning. I'm now forced to wear a million hats. There's so much tech coming at me. I'm drowning.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. This helps guide you and gives you a vision and all that stuff. So it's a really cool product. We just went to the BETT conference, BETT in London. It's the biggest EdTech conference in the world. We were there promoting it 2 weeks ago. And then we went to the TCEA. It's a conference, a big EdTech conference in Texas last week, promoting Tech My School and Tech Plan Genie. Yeah, because we want to help schools be organized, validate all the work they're doing, create vision, all those, pain points that we all have. But at the same time, it helps generate money towards our mission of serving schools in Puerto Rico and beyond. We've also helped some schools in Africa, and we work with a school in Greece. We worked in tons of schools in the mainland US and stuff like that.
It's just the beginning, being that you're this international educator. You can't help yourself. You're going to have your finger in every single continent.
I came here to rest. Remember the original story? I came here to
How's that sabbatical going now, Robby?
This is the boat, and it's a yacht. Soon to be a battleship.
So Tech My Genie, amazing at helping and guiding a tech audit specified to that school, which sounds phenomenal. Now, you describe technology as a catalyst for transformation when it's thoughtfully integrated. So what does thoughtfully integrated actually look like in a real classroom?
Two things. I think one you're using is based off of a purpose. There's a vision, there's a point, there is an intentional use. So you intentionally use the technology, meaning you're not going to randomly use technology based on a whim, based off some commercial you saw of some other classroom. It's going to be planned, it's going to be thought out. As an educator, you're going to know the difference between EdTech and Tech Ed and be intentional about why you're using the tools that you're using and understanding the impact it has on your instruction and also the skills your students are acquiring when using this technology. The second part of this is it must be data-driven. So once you're intentional with your design of how you're implementing technology in your classroom thoughtfully, you want to ensure that it is data-driven, meaning you are going to track the work that you're using. You're going to have a plan. You're going to implement your plan. You're going to start to showcase it or deliver your plan. And then during that process of delivery, you're going to start taking notes. You're going to start to track your data and see what's working and what's not working. And then over a period of time, or even in your first initial day, you're going to start to adjust based off the speed and agility of your learners. So if your learners are adept and they're getting it, you may speed things up. If they're not getting it, you're going to slow down. And again, you're going to use this data to drive your instruction. And then also intentional. So you know the standards you're supposed to be hitting, you know the skills you're supposed to be teaching, and you're mindful of how this technology is impacting your own instruction and your own guidance of the learning with the students.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Like purpose, intention, data-driven. You don't know where to go if you don't know the information, right? Data. That was the one thing I felt like in education that I felt just took so much of my time. Like I'd be looking at this data or collecting this data, and then you'd be like, oh gosh, what's my next steps here? And just trying to analyze that. Just needed to have my husband who's like a full analyst. The critical thinkers find this really easy, but the empaths who want to be there to connect with the students to teach, it just drains you. So I love how technology, you can utilize it to pinpoint what maybe not your strong suit is, and it can enhance that and make you an even more powerful educator, right?
To your point, it is difficult for teachers to track their data and be intentional and purposeful with their data if they're not really on top of it, or if their school doesn't have a really passionate, intentional leader who's driving this home. So with that, again, knowing I know the answer to the question, I need to have a solution to the problem.
Yes.
I do. We use something in Tech My School called the Tech Report in my book, which is called Tech-Centered Learning Driven. There's a kind of a template and there's a QR code and you can scan it and follow along. But basically it breaks down this EdTech versus Tech Ed in a very simple and easy to digest way where teachers can quickly insert qualitative and quantitative data to help drive their instruction on an annual basis. That way they're intentional on how they're teaching skills and avoiding gaps and those kinds of things.
Can you quickly tell us the difference between EdTech and Tech Ed?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question because that's how I start my book actually is the difference between ed tech and tech ed. And I myself didn't really know that. I had a master's in IT and I was seeing it all the time on Twitter at the time, now X. It was like hashtag ed tech, hashtag tech ed. And I'm like, what is the difference here? Like,
Mm,
what is that? But essentially, ed tech is being intentional or mindful of how technology is going to impact your own instruction, what you're asking students to do, how it's impacting your delivery, how it's impacting your classroom. So, an easy reference point would be like the SAMR model. Many people know the SAMR model. Do you know the SAMR
I do
model?
not know.
The SAMR model, which is substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. And essentially, it's like looking at how this technology impacts your classroom. And there's this really very easy to conceptualize infographic. If you just Google SAMR, SAMR, it'll show this person on the shoreline and it'll say no tech. And then it'll be like S, which is substitution, would be like someone in the water using a snorkel.
Yeah.
And a substitution example would be like instead of handwriting an essay, they're typing it.
Yeah.
So they're using technology, they're just substituting it,
Yeah.
but they're not really going further. And then augmentation would be like them on a little boat or something. And then modification goes deeper. They're scuba diving and then they're like in a submarine or something like
Yes.
that. That's basically the infographic showcasing the range of it. My only critique with SAMR is that when you ask educators to tell me the difference between augmentation and modification using two different tools, and you ask that to 10 different teachers, you're going to get 10 different answers. There's some overlap and some gray there, at least just from my experience. Maybe the author of it would disagree with me greatly. But in my experience in working in schools and my own interpretation of it and those kinds of things, is just the SAMR model is great as a starting point for a conceptualization standpoint. But when it comes to really understanding impact, I look more towards Sonny Magana's T3 model. Do you know Sonny Magana?
No, tell me.
Sorry, I'm going full nerd on you here.
Oh, it's
So,
fine.
Sonny Magana basically took the concepts of SAMR, made his own version of it, but based it more off of data. So, there's this wonderful researcher named John Hattie. I think he's from your part of the world. I think he's from Australia. He basically looked at the impact size of what impacts learning. And he looked at all things that could affect a kid when it comes to learning, from like small classroom sizes, homework, no homework, homeschool, blah, 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 not getting food at home, changing new
Yeah.
schools, all those things. John Hattie, he's far better than me. But his impact scale really has been such a benefit to education at large, globally. And so Son Magana took SAMR, he took John Hattie's work, and he put it into this model called the T3. And so there's 3 different levels with 2 subsets for each. And it gives a far clearer understanding of how technology impacts instruction. And it's based off of John Hattie's data
Wow.
rather than like the tool itself, which was what SAMR
Yes.
does. Yeah. So yeah, it's great. And I've worked with Sonny personally, so nice guy. So that's EdTech. EdTech is understanding how technology impacts your instruction as a teacher. Am I going to ask kids to just type something up, or am I going to ask them to collaboratively work on a Google Doc and share that document on a blog and it's going to be read around the world or something like that?
Yeah.
Whereas if technology didn't exist, it'd be like really hard to ask kids to have their work to be read around the world or
Yes.
whatever. Tech ed, on the other hand, conversely, is student skill acquisition. So this is understanding what skills students need,
Gotcha.
what they should be learning, and at what grade. So there should be a scope and sequence that follows it if you're really doing it properly. So that would be tech ed would be like your ISTE standards. If ISTE, the ISTE standards are like a globally famous set of technology standards. I know Australia has its own national technology standards. China, different countries have different technology standards. ISTE is like the one of the pioneers in the field. Yeah, overarching. It goes everywhere. They're all around the world. They're called the ISTE standards. So that's basically understanding what skills students need and at what age is it appropriate to teach a particular skill. And so that's another thing that we've done is created a scope and sequence based off the ISTE standards. So teachers understand what skills they need to teach and at what age. And we also broke down the technical terms into layman terms because there's like within the ISTE standards, there's a lot of tech jargon. So unless you've studied EdTech, you wouldn't really understand what it's saying or asking you to do. You'd kind of have to guesstimate. Whereas we break it down in Tech My School where it's, I need to teach Google Calendar. And I don't teach that at kindergarten. I teach Google Calendar in like 6th grade, 4th grade or whatever.
Yeah.
To make it more practical. So yeah, that's the difference between EdTech and Tech Ed.
Oh, that's great.
Technology impacts your instruction versus knowing what skills students need at what age.
Thank you. Thank you for that quick lesson because it's very helpful to know, just flipping those letters around or the words around.
Yes, because you'll
So
see hashtag tech ed or ed tech, and you're like, what's it?
now we know. So the listeners all say thank you. When technology is used intentionally, like what positive changes do you see in student engagement and learning? Like what happened in these Puerto Rico schools once Tech My School came in?
Yeah, we've seen schools, we've worked with schools now for 5 years, and to see a classroom that used to just be, and no offense to the school, when I was going back to the first part of our conversation, when I was watching the teachers teach, it would be a teacher coming in the classroom, turning their back into the classroom, writing in cursive or whatever on the board for about 8 to 10 minutes, a paragraph, turning around, and the entire time the class is just going nuts, right? Turning around, telling everyone to shut up, get quiet, and then just repeat after me. Read this sentence, like I'm just parroting the sentence.
Yeah.
The dog is red, the dog is red. The cat is blue, the cat is blue. And then, okay, everyone take out your notebooks and copy off the board this sentence, this paragraph, and then show it to me. Everyone get in a line. Show me that you did it
Well,
right. Check
you'd
it
gone
out.
back in time.
That is how education was happening.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is insane. There's something called the PISA scores, PISA. It's a standardized test that is done globally, reading, math, science. And they show the scores linearly on all the countries and then all their test scores with numbers. And then they graph it out, graphic organizer. In the graphic organizer, they have a cluster of everybody, right? Everyone's say in the middle. And then you got a few schools on the right who are like, let's say Japan or Korea, or those ones that we were thinking of that are like really high performers on one side of it. And then on the other side, you have Mexico, and then you start Chile, and then you get Cambodia. And at the very end, all alone, like miles away from everyone else, is Puerto Rico.
Whoa.
US mainland is in that mainland, that big cluster in the middle.
Yes.
And that instructional practice is a big part of that reason, is just because of that. So to see a school that went from that to now where the teachers are facilitating such great technology, the kids are really passionate about what they're doing. They have autonomy over their learning in a lot of sense. They're building podcasts. They're using AI I'll give you a perfect example. So within our conference, we have something that we call, because we love giving money to teachers, we have something that we call the tech disruptors. What tech disruptors is, we have 5 different categories. One's like entrepreneur, one's art, one's innovative design, etc. And we tell the teachers, hey, share a project, just something that you did this year, enter it in the competition. We have a rubric of scoring. Our judges score it. And then if you're a finalist, we'll invite you to the conference, we'll highlight you, and we'll give you a little booth. You can share with the attendees what you did. And then we also will give you at the end, if you win, $1,000 and a trophy, and like everyone cheers for you. So we do that for 5 categories. So we give out $5,000, 5 different teachers. One of these teachers, this one school that we were working with for 5 years, they had like probably 10 teachers apply, like submit, and they were all just amazing projects. But to see the school that went from, like I said, copying off the board and back in the 1950s, preparing kids for some world that doesn't exist, to having projects where kids are creating music with math using Suno. The science teacher had all the kids identify and personalize an element of the periodic table on the periodic table. And then they all had to turn each element into a superhero. So they're using AI to create the superhero. And they made this whole cool interactive like periodic table to learn the periodic table. And they just made it so fun using Tinkercad to 3D design spaces of like literature they're reading. And just so many cool things like that, where kids are doing these amazing projects and acquiring skills that they're going to need to stay relevant in the informational and AI economy. It's been pretty cool to see that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's an example of the progression. And I know that doesn't always stand up and show up in the standardized testing. Like if you get really good at using AI, that doesn't mean your test scores are going to dramatically improve or whatever. But we also use adaptive learning software that we pay for, like Read Theory, which is let's just call it an ancient EdTech tool. I knew about it for 15 years almost. But it's adaptive. It was very revolutionary when it came out, in the sense that kids would read a passage, there would be questions, they would answer it. If they got it right, the next question would be more difficult, and so forth. And if it was hard or they got it incorrect, it would become easier.
Yeah.
And so it tracks it so the kids know their own Lexile reading level, they know their own grade level for reading. And
yes,
I've been using it with my own kids. So it's a great tool. And so we've seen kids go from 3rd grade reading level all the way up to 11th grade reading level in 1 year.
Wow.
Because they were 16 years old and they'd just never been given an opportunity to have this kind of reading. Given
the right tools, right?
Yeah. And their brain just picked it up, and they cut up super quick. And yeah, we have tons of data that support this, like whole schools just jumping grade levels. Yeah,
That's
because
amazing.
you're facilitating the right tools. And reading, I'm huge on just because it ties into everything.
And I think that's it with technology in terms of it can provide that motivator, that engagement, spark that curiosity, and lead to students creating, I'm having difficulty learning the periodic table. Okay, let's make them into superheroes. Let's create a story around it, link it into what we're passionate about and interested about. And then you're going to have those connections, and that storytelling is going to lead to teaching. They'll then teach their friends, which means they're consolidating that information even more. It's like an amazing snowball effect. But like you said, if you've got the data there to see that they're making these improvements, that the integration of technology isn't sending them back in the other direction or stagnating them. There is that progress and that momentum. So I guess technology is always, I feel like, a hot discussion point. I feel like now my kids are at school and what parents' perception is about technology and other educators. So how do you think schools strike a balance between digital learning and protecting space for still like the creative play, the hands-on learning, and that face-to-face collaboration? Like, what's the sweet spot?
Yeah, as one of our core values within Tech My School is that we're tech-centered but learning-driven.
Yeah.
So when it comes to technology, like a pen is technology, a book is technology. There's lots of different kinds of technology. It doesn't have to just be an app or something. And what matters most is learning. We're all about just putting educators in a position where they're using the best possible tool to acquire and students as well, to acquire the skill set and to understand the standard in the best possible way. And you're right, there should be a balance. I think when it comes to parents, they're very dubious to technology because when they think the word technology applies to everything that plugs into a wall, you know what I mean? So it's like they come home, the kids are on Roblox or YouTube or social media or whatever, and they think, though that's technology, that's the technology that they're doing at school, or for some. And then others are just like, I just don't want them to be on a screen that long. Because if you're on a screen all day at school and then you come home and do screens as well, you're like, that's also a problem. So I think you need to be conscientious about what you're asking students to do. Because if you're a teacher asking students to do the same things that you and I were asked to do when we were in school, write that 5-paragraph essay, and you're not accounting for AI and other tools, you're not going to get the same results. You're going to get this essay that looks flawless and the kid learned nothing. And they'll just try to fake it. And so it's important to, as an educator, to know how you're using the tool that you're using. Not only do you need to know how to do it yourself, but you need to know, how am I asking the students to use this tool and what skills do I want them to know? EdTech, tech ed. And like you're saying, just having that blend of other skills that are going to be important in the future. It's really, because that's our job. Our job is to prepare students for an unknown world. We don't know what the world's going to look like. Technology is exponentially improving and expanding almost to a point now where even if you're a technology specialist and all you do is look at tech all day, you're still behind because it's just so much that can be built and that's so much that is out there. So really, we need critical thinkers, we need collaborators, we need people who can problem solve, we need people who have soft skills, who can communicate and lead a team without using technology like in the real world. And if you look at like Elon Musk built a school for his kids. This was in Silicon Valley a few years ago. He didn't like the traditional model. Knew it was flawed and knew it was industrial. And so he created this school of his own where it just focused on those core skill sets rather than just rote memorization and all those things on Bloom's taxonomy that are towards the bottom and focus more towards on the top. Creativity, analysis, evaluation. All those kinds of things. And so if you're intentional about that in your instruction, then you can get away from using technology in a way that could be seen by parents as something negative. You want to give kids skills that they can use to build things. You want to task them with big challenges. And this goes even into the T3, like the highest form of technology use within the T3, Sonny Magana's work, is social entrepreneurship. So it's using technology to solve what he calls a wicked problem, basically solving a problem about something you care about. So that could be in your own community. It could just be something that's of your interest, a hobby or whatnot, but using technology to leverage that. And if you're teaching, I think good things are going to happen. You're not going to have parents, if you're doing a digital worksheet to practice your rote memorization, or you're consuming YouTube videos all day passively, that's one thing. But if you're using technology to research for a time and then using other tools to build things and create business plans and not just different strategies and things to kind of solve real world problems or things that they care about, or even it could be fictitious, but they're fun and they're engaging and they're hands on. I think the parents would be pretty happy about that because
Yeah.
they're going to have their kids are going to be prepared for this new world.
It's like what you're talking about, your tech disruptors, right? Like with that social entrepreneurship, it's like you're using the technology to see that pattern recognition, to analyze those patterns, and then you become a pattern disruptor and you go, there's something missing here, and I can create something to create this better for my community, for society, whatever it might be. And I think we're still in that phase where I think we'll always be working on this fine line between having this balance. I think it's just how life is in the world that we live in. So what you shared there was very helpful, Robby. And I think it will always be one of those questions you have around the table, the dinner chat talk about tech and like pro AI, anti AI, pro tech, anti tech.
I think honestly, if a school just brought in, let's say if you want to keep it this siloed thing where like you go to math one period, you go to English one period, and you go to science one period, you got to bring back one of those ROTC skills like woodworking, like
Yeah.
welding, like auto mechanics,
Yeah.
gardening and cooking and all these different skills. I think if you had that, technology already wouldn't necessarily dominate the experience. And so parents would feel a lot better. Yes, I know in math they're doing AI strategies or whatever, using this AI tool to help them with math, but he's using a saw to cut a board. For some reason, that's like reassuring in the parent's mind. Like they're physically doing something in the real world. You know what I mean? And schools have gone away from that. They used to, in the 60s, 70s, even in the 80s, there were these kind of technical classes that were mandated on everyone, like cooking and home ec and mechanics and carpentry and certain things like that. I think that those are all fundamentally good skills for people to know. And I think it would force schools or force kids to get off the computer a little bit and to work with their hands and have skills they can use outside of the house. Because I just feel like in my generation and later generations, everyone's just like, where's the easy button? Where's the Uber Eats? Where's the looking for, no one's skilled in that way. And the only people who are skilled are like, no, none of us are skilled. Let's just rely on immigration for these other like people to come in and to do these kind of jobs that, for better or worse, that many Western cultures may see as like less than, gardening or building houses or welding or any of those plumbing.
Yeah.
That seems beneath me. I have a college degree. I don't need to do that. But it's almost, no, we need to bring those back a little bit. So everyone's going to have a house. You need to know how to work on this stuff to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the key is you've got the tech as the tool, but you need that balance, and we need to have that variety in how we have innately learnt over hundreds and thousands of years. Like we use our hands, we use our mind, but I think when it comes to that tech order that you do and you're giving them the EdTech side of things to then check their students' tech acquisition, and we've got the parents here having these thoughts, what do you have in place for schools to communicate the technology decisions to parents in a way that builds trust and confidence rather than this fear and resistance and, oh, we'll just sweep this under the rug and no tech for anyone?
Yeah. So we do a couple of things. Within the software Tech Plan Genie, the first module is you put in all your information of your school colors, branding, and then you create your task force team. So these are going to be like your teachers, your counselors, your principals, your IT people. Everyone's going to be on a team to build the strategic plan. Strategic Planning 101. The next module is a survey module. And within that survey module, you're going to send it to all your constituents, including parents. So you're going to hear what their voice is, what their concerns are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the power of AI isn't just AI for AI's sake. I can't go into ChatGPT and say, make me a tech plan. It's going to make me this amazing tech plan. It's all about asking the right questions, knowing what questions to ask and asking the right questions to aggregate the right data.
Yeah.
So when you're using Tech Plan Genie, it's getting all these voices from your community baked into your plan. So when you're starting to build the plan out, whether it's concerns or pushing for new things, it's going to incorporate those voices and ask you, hey, you sure you want to do this because the parent said this? And it's going to incorporate all the people's voices within it. And then also within the software, there's a little Genie bot. So as you've built your plan, there's basically an AI bot there that knows your school inside and out.
Yeah.
So you can ask questions like, hey, I'm thinking about implementing XYZ, this new technology, this new tool, whatever, adding this class. And it's going to say, here's something that you can ask it, what should I worry about and what should I be excited about? And it'll say, according to your 38% of your parents, they're worried about XYZ. So you may want to take this consideration before rolling this out. And here's a way that you can roll it out to get everyone on board. So it has like a little genie friend that you can ask questions to and be a thought partner.
Because it's got your little devil's advocate there, your little devil and angel, right?
Because when you're in that position, when you're in leadership, they say it's lonely at the top. If you're a fourth grade teacher and there's usually 3 or 4 other fourth grade teachers, you can talk about lessons, you can structure and plan together. When you're the tech person, it's like people come to your office like, hey, what do you think about this? Or do you know this? And of course your answer has to be, yeah, totally know that. And then as soon as they leave, you're like researching what the heck they just said. And when you're talking about planning or implementing things, you don't really have anyone to bounce ideas off with because you're like this specialist and not everyone else is on the school. Maybe no one in the school is a tech specialist. So it's like you're on your own. So you're going to forums, you're going to LLMs, you're doing all your stuff. So it's great to have this little genie that really knows your school well to help you take those pieces into consideration for parents. So the plan is going to be, it's going to have parent input to start. And you're going to have this little genie that knows what parents are thinking. The second part of it, though, is we also provide a lot of parent trainings. So we'll do parent trainings quarterly. And these parent trainings, usually the first one will be like, okay, welcome to our school. Here's the tools we use at the schools. Here's how to do it, tutorials, blah, blah, blah. The next training, based off the data, whether they're concerned about social media fears or kids' screen time or whatever, we'll do something called like tech at night. So what does it mean to be technology at home, and here's strategies to keep your kids safe, and an example would be like have all of the chargers for all the devices in the living room, not in the student's bedroom, because that way the devices are in the living room getting charged at night. Because if not, if you say, oh, good night, honey, kid goes to sleep, you think they went to bed on time, they wake up all super tired because they were just, as soon as you left the room, they just flipped open their device and were on their device talking with their friends till 2 a.m. or something.
Yeah.
So there's different strategies like that. So not only are we taking their voice into consideration, we're building the plan and what we do, but then also we're giving reinforcing skills for them on a quarterly basis. So they have opportunities to voice things, to learn things, and feel supported.
That's
great. We do that for all of our schools
because I think like with technology, it's something new, and with it evolving so quickly, it's new, it's change, and let's be honest, we all find change a bit uncomfortable. So by that, you have these frameworks in place to support the educators, to support the administrators, and to support the parents, and ideally the students and the empowerment in their learning. It sounds really phenomenal. So tell us, Robby, where do we get this info about this amazing business that you've created? Tell us more.
Yeah, so the nonprofit, if you have used tech, old tech, you want to come to our conference and speak or just attend. If you want to learn more about what we do, donate, etc., you go to techmyschool.org. And the way you can remember Tech My School is the name of the company. When I was thinking of it, besides Teach My School, there was this show on MTV. If you remember music television, MTV, back in like the 90s.
Yeah.
There's this show called Pimp My Ride. Do you remember that show?
Yes. That's a great
and it was like this kid would come with his broke cars all messed up, and he really liked tennis. And then Exhibit would be like, all right, dog, I'm going to hook you up. And he'd leave, and then they would take the car and break it down and build it up, and it'd be all tennis themed or whatever.
Yeah.
That was my thinking. Like I go to these schools and I pimp them out.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
tech school. I like it.
Tech My School, Pimp My Ride, Tech My School. That's Tech My School, the nonprofit serving these schools. And then the company that part of the proceeds go towards helping what we're doing, because we're trying to create multiple revenue streams. It's called Tech Plan, because you're planning. Tech Plan Genie. And so you just go to techplangenie.com. It's all there. You can get started right away. Just click to register. If you sign up for it, the first 7 days are free. And then what we do is we have 3 options. One is you go solo, where you just take the software, you look at the modules, you go through it with your team, you lead the conversation, you aggregate the data, you generate the reports, and you're good to go. It's just a great tool in your tool belt. And it's probably the first tool you've ever had that's specifically just for you. Or what you can do, another option, is if you wanted to, we can support you remotely. So this is where like you're doing the software with your team, but we're there to coach you and walk you through it and answer questions and just be that kind of little genie on your shoulder, a human genie on your shoulder to get you through the process and give you strategies and stuff like that. Because there's definitely good, we've done this process hundreds of times. So we know we've learned a thing or two about what works well and what doesn't. And the third way is a white glove experience. This is where we will literally fly to your school. We will run the whole thing with your school. You'd still have access to the software with your team and you'd have it all year, but we would just come to you and you can work with us and we work with your team to make sure everything is like totally tailored to your school. Everything would be perfect. And we get to ask those questions that you may be a bit scared to ask because in schools, there's a lot of politics. And so sometimes you want to ask certain questions, but you feel, I'm not sure if I can ask this question without repercussions.
Yes.
Or I'm not going to get honest answers or whatever. And so sometimes you just need that third party to come in to ask the same question that you'd ask anyways to get the honest answer. Because if you ask it as an underling, you might get a dubious response, or even you might feel uncomfortable asking a question like, why does our internet service suck? Whatever. And they're like, oh, this guy's not a team player or whatever. But really, you're just asking questions. But anyways, so those are the kind of three ways that we serve. And then we've also worked with schools where not only did we help them build the tech plan, but we actually help them fulfill it. So we would actually help them build once that plan's created, you have a professional development, you have all these different things. We would actually help that team build the professional trainings, work with or train their staff or whatever.
That's awesome. And all this will be in our show notes, beautiful listeners.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah.
So,
and it's all for a great cause. It's to help America's most underserved, underprivileged, lowest performing school in the world. Literally, it's worse than any other country. You can look at PISA, PISA, you can see for yourself.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico scored, they're the worst of the worst.
Oh, and the passionate thing that it has led to you creating this thing that is going to impact and improve and support so many already overloaded educators and create a clear plan and steps moving forward, which as a overthinker over here, the tech plan genie just sounds phenomenal. On the podcast, we have a little tradition where the previous guest has left a question for the next guest. So I've got a question here for you, Robby, and it's, what have you changed your mind about when it comes to education? How long is a piece of string?
Yeah, it's interesting. I can give an honest answer. I can give hopeful. I have many thoughts come to me at once when you're saying this, because there are some things that I'm going to leave with a positive, inspirational one, which is, and it was just from my own experience. So I'm going through this process of serving one school, then serving two schools and four schools and all these. Now we've served 50 schools and doing all this work. And I'm like, you're not really sure if you can make a difference or if you really have the skill set. There's so many better educators than me, more established educators than me, more accomplished people, more accredited people, and all those kinds of things. You can, as an individual person, make a huge difference just by yourself, just by sticking to a passion, sticking to an idea and following through, showing up and keep building, take that risk. I asked myself this question when I first started. As educators, we tell kids, be risk takers, show up for people. When someone's getting bullied, be brave and stand up for them and be entrepreneurial and all these things. But I feel like educators at their core are very risk averse. Yeah. It's like we went to school, we were good kids, we raised our hand, we were compliant. And we continued with school because we were good at school. And then we went to university for more school. And then we went from university back to school to teach at a school. We never really left the security blanket of school, this system in which we were born into. And pretty much that's all we know. And so I had to ask myself that because it was scary to be like, am I going to actually say no to the security blanket that I've known my entire career? And I've worked very hard to get this great position to try to make a difference in this system that's broken. Can I actually make a difference? You know what I mean? Yeah. And to take a chance. If I've been just lying to kids, be entrepreneurial, be risk averse, take risks, take chances, all these, be courageous when I myself haven't been that courageous. So I was and I did. So I'm going to stick with a positive one. Because my brain does go a lot of different places with education. I'm not going to be that salty old teacher, but I'm just going to, I've learned that you can, as one person,
make change.
Make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Make a big change.
That was a loaded question I gave you. So it is one that could be unpacked for hours, days, weeks, and years.
It can go a lot of directions. I can go happy, I can go sad, I can go so angry, I can go inspirational, lots of things.
I appreciate you ending on a positive note. Robby, it has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robby. Thanks for choosing to listen to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, the go-to show dedicated to teachers who want to make a big difference in education.
If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a 5-star review or share the episode with a friend. Because together we're
unstoppable.